Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about visual thinking and how I use a Miro board to help me visualize my code. So, for today, I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about who I am. And then I'm going to do a deep dive into why I like to use a visual and how all of this came about. Then we're going to solve a problem together. I'm going to do a live demonstration about how I create my Miro board. And then finally, I'm going to give you three takeaways that I hope you guys can take home. And that's it. A little bit about me. I'm a software developer at Skip the Dishes. I have been coding for over 5 years. It has been a passion of mine that has grown since I picked it up as a hobby, and it's something that I quite enjoy today. I currently volunteer as an organizer with the Calgary Software Crafters and the Software Developers of Calgary. I contribute to the weekly mob programming session with approval tests. So, why visual? Where did this come from? So at work the other day, I had picked up a ticket that required some investigation. Now, this ticket was to investigate why this log was being thrown. It was throwing this error that wasn't really breaking anything in production, but this error has been thrown for over a year. So, what we wanted to do was look into the code, find out what was throwing this error, and see if we can just deprecate the call so that our logs isn't filled with too much unnecessary noise. And when I started to investigate, I found out that there were three different methods that was throwing this error. And when I looked into one method and figured out what it does and started looking into another, I would completely forget what happened in the first one. So it was a very hard struggle for me to understand what these three methods were doing that was causing this error to be thrown. Now, earlier in the week, I was in a mob programming session with one of my friends, Jacqueline. She's the co founder of the Calgary Software Crafters. That was how we met. And she showed us how she likes to view her code. She would take snippets of different pieces of code and put them on the Miro board, and she would draw arrows from each one to show how they were connected. I thought, let's try this. Let's see what happens. So I was at work. I opened up the Miro board and I took snippets of code and put them into code blocks on the Miro board. And what I ended up creating was something that looked like this. So as you can see, there's a lot going on with this code. It was why I had a hard time visualizing it mentally without having an actual whiteboard to show all the code. And once I had this visual, I was able to put in blue post-it notes of what I understand is happening, what I needed to do, and what I believe is the intent behind the method. And from that, I was able to add little to do notes to further complete my investigation. And when it comes to deprecating code, you want to make sure that nothing else is calling it or nothing important is calling it, and that we actually don't need this method anymore. Now, the four takeaways that I got out of this one ticket was that having that visual, I was able to see what work needs to be done, what other work I need to do just to make sure that I am not breaking anything in production. The second thing was that it gave me improved communication with my team. Now, this was something that was in our backlog. It wasn't a high priority ticket. And I didn't want to take up our tech discussions, explaining to everybody, giving that presentation of what I found and what I think our next steps are with regards to this ticket. So, what I ended up doing was I wrote a Word document explaining what I found and I linked it to my Miro board to show them this is how I came to my conclusion. And what came out of that was that I got the three approvals that I needed to continue on. And I didn't have to do a presentation. So if presentations aren't your thing, consider creating a visual and writing a document that you can share with your team. The other feedback that I got from my team was that they liked how I used the Miro board to create that visual. They found it simple and easy to understand. And I also found it the same way. Once I had that visual, everything made a lot more sense. I was able to give my recommendations and think about what other steps to consider. And once I was ready to share that document with my findings, that was it. So today, we are going to investigate how the verified method works in the Java version of approval tests. And what you will need is the code. It's available on GitHub. You can go to approvaltest.com and just click on the Java logo, and it will take you right into the repository. Next, you will need an IDE. I prefer IntelliJ. That is my preferred IDE, but whatever you choose will work just fine. Then you will need a whiteboard. I like the Miro board. That is my preference, but any whiteboard you choose will be fine. There are many different options up there. So whatever you choose that you like to use that. And lastly, you will need yourself. So what we are going to do in this live demonstration is we're going to find the verify method. Then we're going to create a visual of how it works. Then we're going to organize the code using frames. And finally, we're going to show off our work. All right, let's do it. So this is the verify method that we are going to visualize on the Miro board. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this method. And here is my blank Miro board. I'm going to use a code block to paste in that code. And I normally like to resize it just so it's not taking up a whole lot of space or any unnecessary space. And that way I have more space on the whiteboard to put all of my code blocks. And the way I name this code block is I use the class name, approvals. And then I like to specify the line number, line 44, because sometimes when I'm working in thousands of lines of code, I like to have that line number as a reference so that it's easy for me to find where it is. Okay, next, I am going to draw a red box around this verify. And I like the color red, but feel free to choose whichever color you like. Okay, then I'm gonna find this verify. Okay, paste another block. And that was in approvals line 48. And then I draw an arrow from this box to this box. And I like to keep the color the same so that I can see how it flows. And it'll make more sense a little bit later when we start to branch off into different methods. So I'm going to make another red box. I'm going to highlight this verify. Then I'm going to find what this verify is. Okay, that was in approvals line 181. Make another code block. Okay, approvals line 181. I'm going to draw my red arrow. Let's do it again. Another red box. And what's this verify? This verify is in line 173. And another red line with, guess what? Another red box. Okay, now where does this verify take us? That takes us here. Okay, so this is where the colors come in handy. at least for me. Now that was in approvals. Approvals line 206. Oh, I need my red line. Okay, so this method is actually calling 3 different methods here. The first one is this one. Okay, the second one is this one. And I'm actually going to change this to green. And then the third one is this one here, and I'm going to change this to blue. Okay, so first I'm going to look at this red one, approver.report failure. Let's look at that. Where is that? Let's look at one implementation. Okay, it's right here. Copy this. I'm going to put this code down here. And that is in file approver, line 47. And I'm going to draw a red line from here to here. Then I like to add a little bit of text, just in case this gets really big and I'm trying to follow where everything is. And I like to name this as if is failure. And I got that from here. So if the result is failure, it's going to call approver.report failure. Okay. Next, I'm going to do this one, clean up after success. Now, the reason I'm not going any further with this one is that I don't see any need to. It's reporting that failure, which is what the verify is supposed to do if your result is a failure. Okay, so let's go back. We're going to look up clean up after success. That is back here. We're going to do one implementation. That's this method. And I am going to put that to the side over here. Resize this. That was in file approver, line 39. And this time, I'm going to draw a green arrow. So this is where I say I like the colors, because then if I only want to look at the green, I can only look at the green. Okay, and I'm going to name this as if is successful. Okay, and lastly, we're going to look at approver.fail. So over here. Okay, and that was also in file approver, line 57. And I am going to draw a line from here to here. And I'm going to do that blue. Now, let's look at what these options are doing, like options.getComparator, options.forFile.getNamer, options.createWriter. It's just to give us some extra information. Okay, so I'm going to start with, let's start with this one, line 48, create writer. So we'll go back up to line 48. Let's click into here. That takes us to this piece of code. I'm going to put it here. Okay, and that is in options, line 74. And I'm going to put this as yellow. And the reason I put this as yellow is because it's going in the opposite direction. So over here, we are going down. This method is calling this method, it's calling this method, it's calling this method. But this method here, one of the parameters is calling this method over here. So that's why I drew a different color line with the arrow pointing this way, because the return factory.create is returning data that goes into this method. Okay, so here I'm going to look at for file and get namer. This one's line 181. Line 181 in approvals. Okay, for file. This is the method for file. And I'm going to put that over here. And that is in options line 84. Same thing, yellow arrow over here. And then let's look at get namer. Get namer takes us here. Okay, and that is in options line 103. I'm going to put this over here. Now it's starting to get a little busy, so I am going to reorganize this. Now all these options, these are all from the options class. I'm going to line them up together like this, and then I'm going to select them all. I'm going to shift it up a little bit so that's a little bit more centered to where everything else is. Okay, and finally we're going to look at options.get comparator in line 173. Line 173, let's look at this one. Okay, so I'm going to put that there. Put an options line 54. Now I'm going to draw a yellow arrow to here. Okay, now let's say we need more information. When I say we need more information, we need more information about file approver. Like, what is file approver? And the way I would draw this out is I'm going to make a little bit more space down here so I can put in that method. Remove all of this up. Then I'm going to go back to line 173 in approvals. I'm going to click into here, and that takes me to here. So I'm going to copy this method. I'm going to paste it here. And I am going to name this file approver line 26. Okay, let me reorganize my code a little bit here. Let's put all the file approver classes together. And let me not forget my yellow arrow that goes over here. And then I am going to shift these code blocks up a little bit. I'm going to line them up just so it looks pretty. Okay, now we can see from file approver, it is calling namer.getReceivedFile and namer.getApprovedFile. Now I am going to make a yellow box because we are working with yellow arrows right now. So I'm going to make a yellow box. Okay, and I'm going to find what getReceivedFile does. Okay. All right, this one has 3 implementations. So I'm going to show you how I draw it, and feel free to visualize it any way that works for you. So I'm going to start with this one, the master directory namer. Okay, I'm going to copy that. Then I'm going to make a block over here. Okay, and that was in master directory namer. Line 28. Move that there. I'm going to draw an arrow this way because this method is now calling this method. Okay, I'm going to go back and I'm going to, I went back too far. Implementation. Okay, I'm going to go into name wrapper and copy the code, paste the code here. Okay, and that was in name wrapper, line 57. Okay, draw my arrow over here, and then we're going to do one more. We're going to get the last one, the stack trace namer. Nope, that did not copy. And copy and paste. And that was in stack trace namer line 52. Okay, so I hope you are getting the general idea of how I do this. And you can see it can start to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay, so now here is all of our code. And as you can see, we have different classes, different methods, arrows going different ways. So it's starting to get a little bit busy. And the way I like to use frames is to organize all the code and how it is structured. In this scenario, I would use a frame that would outline each class. So I would create a frame and I would frame the approvals class, everything in there. And I'm going to call this approvals. And then I'm going to put another frame down here. Let me undo that frame. Let's create a frame again. Let's see if it works. Okay, it's gonna go down here. Let me zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to name this one here. Let me zoom back in. And I'm going to call this frame file approver. And the nice things about frames is that you can actually move all the content within it. So I can shift it down here. I can shift this one up, and everything kind of goes with it. Okay. Then let's frame the options. I'll call this one options. Next, I'm going to frame all these file approvers, and I just realized that this one actually belongs under here. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to frame all of this. I'm going to adjust it, line it up, make it look pretty. I'm going to move this arrow down to here. Okay, and lastly, let me extend this frame. I am going to add one more frame around here. And this one I'm going to name a little bit differently because this has a different purpose. And I'm going to name this as 3 different implementations. Spell implementations correctly. Implementations of get receive file. And then when I am done, I like to create one big frame for all of this. And I'm going to call this the approval test verify method. And the reason I like to frame everything is if I were to share this with someone on my team, I can just copy the link to this entire frame and send them the link. And then that will take them straight into this little frame right here. And you can see that work right there. Ta-da! Okay. So as promised, there are 3 takeaways that I would like you to take. First is communication. Now for me, by having that visual, I was able to effectively communicate with my team on how I came up with my findings and why I chose to do it this way. Next is a visual. Okay. So for me, being able to see how the code flowed allowed me to determine what I need to do in order to complete my ticket. And lastly, make it yours. Make this your own. Showcase who you are. Be creative. This is how I like to create my board. I encourage you to find a way to create one that works for you. And that's it. I hope you enjoy this presentation.